Halloween Horror Nights Orlando has had a lot of immersive and overlooked haunts, like a bunch. But that's not shocking. You know what is shocking? There's still 45 more haunts to go. After this episode of the HHN Countdown, I'm SixBillium. This is Nyx the Needy Scaredy Cat. And so far we've counted 60 haunts with 65 left to go until we reach the very best of them all. Check out parts 1, 2, and 3 in the top corner. Now, without hyperbole, some of these haunts are the best that I've ever seen, so let's get to it. I'd say this is like a combination between Legends Collide and Bride of Frankenstein Lives, and maybe even better than both of them. Okay, so maybe I lied a little bit about this first one. The epic conclusion to this reimagining, Universal Monsters Eternal Bloodlines, was risky and not consistently stellar. Yet for me, most of the ideas worked. Taking the storytelling altogether in a risky direction, offering a silent moment of chilling reflection in the aftermath of the gruesome death of the brand new main character. A stomach-dropping twist that echoes the suddenness of real-life horrors, a depressing ending even by haunt standards. Paired with the gorgeous visuals inside, I take this experiment with uneven execution and unrealized potential over something as familiar as Unmasked. Eternal Bloodlines was surely immersive and definitely overlooked, but regardless, it would have taken a behemoth to conquer two of the best narrative haunts I've seen. But who said narratives always have to be so serious? 2014's Giggles and Gore Inc. showcased how evil clowns are created, not born. Its twisted sense of fun, more akin to Not Scary Farm than HHN. Woody Woodpecker as a torture device? Man, I miss this type of self-deprecating humor. A gleefully gory labyrinth through this mostly abandoned factory all led to the discarded. The evil clowns that were like evil squared that even the other evil clowns were afraid of. But these little goobers were just some sticky green dudes. And I mean, trust me guys, I get it. I've been there before, it's not fun. As perhaps the shortest haunt out of all 125, there were plenty of giggles and plenty of gore, but missing was the pivotal fear factor that would cement these killer clowns as a timeless classic. I mean, that's what got the original Walking Dead to rise above the pack with 2012's Dead Inside. While the approach of more is more is more certainly wasn't a groundbreaking concept, the quality was still right there along with the quantity. And that statement showed that The Walking Dead had more blood rushing through than any other zombie haunt in memory. The walkers may have often shared the spotlight with each other, but the quiet moments waiting for chaos to erupt weren't forgotten. By the end of its run, The Walking Dead was nothing more than a lifeless, synergistic IP. But at the start, it was clear that this franchise had a deservedly long life ahead. Shady Brook Asylum and those guys from that Buffy episode? What is this, a crossover episode? Oh wait, it actually is. 2015's Body Collector's Recollections is begrudgingly placed a bit higher than I personally feel, because overall it was a pretty stellar haunt. A grab bag of HHN staples, like this and that, and of course this, and that dude that's been in like everything, all set against an uneasily silent winter's chill. I found unwarranted fan service to be the biggest shortcoming of 2015, as Recollections was essentially two previous haunts spliced together with minimal flourishes. As I said, a technically sound haunt through and through, but it was missing the heart. I'm sure the gentlemen have one somewhere. Hey look, I found one. Now, transfer all those ideas, reused props and recycled rooms into an actual fan service wet dream. 2010's Horror Nights, The Hallowed Past, my first ever Orlando haunt, was part lights on tour, part gripping haunt, and full-on HHN overload. Admittedly, the extravagance of window shopping 2 decades worth of nostalgia was measurably more compelling than the greatest hits section that followed, a celebration of all things HHN, but mostly 2008. This haunt was influential in molding me into SixBillium, showcasing the duality of every haunted house, the crowd-pleasing moments that has everyone coming back for more, and the hidden secrets that have us nerds squeal with joy. And as much of a full circle moment as it was for me, the same can be said for then show director Mike Aiello.
This room actually holds a special place in my heart because this was my first gig at Horror Nights ever. I was the captain of the Frightanic. I helmed this puppy right here.
HHN means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Heck, I probably wouldn't have moved to Florida and met my wife if it wasn't for HHN. Yet, beyond the Unmasking the Horror tours, Universal rarely allows a peek at the building blocks of the event or a glimpse into the past. always moving forward, these warehouse experiences like the hallowed past have evolved into something new, something just as fascinating. Tribute stores are a new-ish and welcome staple of HHN. First introduced in 2015 in the defunct Twister gift shop. You know that if you watch my HHN trivia. What started as nostalgic prop showcases have now transformed into intricate stories packed with lore and Easter eggs for the longtime fans. And in themselves, the tribute stores are an engrossing attraction with no time limit, no HHN admission required, and no 2-hour wait. Well, myself, and I'm sure many others, miss scouring the old websites and explore every pixel to uncover any tidbit about HHN. I see the tribute stores as the next logical step, a response to my critique that HHN as a product isn't given enough credit. A way to share the history of HHN and invite guests to look a little closer, but only if they'd like. Another overall critique of HHN is that there may be some gorgeous set pieces and some terrifying creations, but not often does the event conjure up imagery so iconically nightmarish that it clouds your vision every time you close your eyes. The Weekend After Hours Nightmare was HHN's response. A relatively simplistic yet effective fever dream, eschewing the conventions of modern haunts where club lighting and obvious distractions took center stage. I would have liked to have seen the latter half through a less conventional lens, but these after-hour nightmares are what the event needs more of. Blockbuster partnerships that can only be done by Universal. But I think Penn & Teller's 2012 appearance in Nuked Vegas was a stronger lightning-in-a-bottle collaboration. Universal didn't just work with Penn & Teller, they essentially handed them the keys to the castle to create a toxic, hallucinatory 3D trip through Vegas. And by the level of detail in the sets to the sly homages, Easter eggs, and confident sense of identity, this wasn't simply an inspired by haunt, with the duo themselves even sporadically appearing as characters throughout the event.
Sometimes in this room, you'll get to meet very special guests in Penn & Teller, Nuked Las Vegas.
Every scene was so funny, so out there, with lively characters, unpredictable effects, and guest-activated triggers around every corner. There's a reason Nuked Vegas is the second best 3D haunt I've ever done. The effects only enhanced what would have been a blast even without... my eyes! Whew, good thing we already had Stranger Things as a warm-up. 2018's Dead Exposure, Patient Zero could have simply copied most of 2008's original and been just as successful, but instead created an unsettling, spooky story to tell in the dark, literally, which I believe did a better job of exploring Paris than Unmasked did, the haunting silhouettes leaving a lingering sense of horror. The journey intentional, the finale surprising, and the scares, oof. Even if you knew the gimmick, HHN knew how to throw you off guard. Sure, it's a bit easier to create intense scares when there's darkness all around. But what about when all the scares come from children? In an underrated haunt that gets a bad rep, Cindy Kane's Domain, 2010's The Orphanage, Ashes to Ashes, was one of the creepiest haunts that you never experienced. And with the only true fire effect found inside of a haunt, maybe that's why the Jaws queue no longer exists. A haunt location that I actually greatly miss. This isn't it, it just fit the bit. Throughout this countdown, we ventured through sound stages, warehouses, tents, and even attraction queues. But is any location really any better than the others? Not really. We've seen massive sets inside those cramped tents, and claustrophobic mazes inside of these ginormous sound stages. And even haunts that had to be designed around permanent obstacles weren't always deterred by that handicap. That doesn't mean your favorite venue will be the same as mine. Well, the sprung tents contain a good chunk of the upcoming top 50. You'll see a haunt from each type of location in the top 5. Size doesn't matter because there's always a way to make the most minuscule footprints feel massive, even if you can't actually build it. You've already seen Universal favorite trick dozens of times, but you've probably noticed it far less than that. Stick around because we'll look into that later in this episode. If the museum Deadly Exhibits was safe, then Yeti Campground Kills was like safe squared. It's apparent to me that this was the haunt designed for the folks who just want to have a few drinks and some lighthearted fun at HHN, which isn't a negative, just an observation. A conglomeration of familiar ideas that had worked really well in the past few years, yet the effects were more kinetic, the vistas more intriguing, the flow and blocking more interesting. Innocuous yet entertaining, but all too familiar only a few years after Terror of the Yukon. Bonus points for the memorable characters. HHN has thankfully seen an uptick in stylish and unforgettable supporting casts, and I guess I should be happy that I made it into the haunt.
Billy, where are you? Billy!
I think she said sign up for a channel membership to see more scaredy cats, but what do I know? Yet, I think Bugs Eaten Alive from the previous year accomplished all of that just a little bit better, especially in the costuming department, slimy and yucky ew, and more distinct than just nameless Bug Scare number 3. The only flaw was that it did take a bit to get to the action, but once that infestation hit, all your phobias came to life in horrifying and gruesome ways. The references to creepy crawlies in every facet of the decor was an inspired touch, and I certainly think we deserve a bigger and better Bugs sequel one day. I may have really enjoyed BuzzCon, but I know it was polarizing. Polarizing in a similar sense to A Quiet Place, one of only like 3 haunts that I think was much better in Hollywood, but in Orlando, was it an ambitious home run or a disappointing strikeout? Well, it was kinetic and clever in the way these puppets were able to blend into their environment until it was time to strike. Most of the scenic design was towering and packed with detail. There's no argument that these are the best puppets HHN has created by a mile, but A Quiet Place still fell for some of the classic blunders of HHN. And even though the silence was eerie, the sense of misdirection was lost. A more ambient sound design would have done wonders for this Quiet Place, but still, let's not forget that pulse-pounding cold open. Though I think it comes second only to 2013's Evil Dead, maybe my pick for the best intro of them all. Gory, gooey, and visceral is the only way to describe this descent into the world of the Deadites. Easily the best cabin in the woods of 2013, and the only pre-Terrifier haunt I've experienced that required an umbrella. I mean, the final scene was called Raining Blood, and if you didn't do your homework, that was on you. Expertly balancing the bloody antics with heart-pounding scares, Evil Dead never felt like the emphasis was on one over the other, crafting a dreadful atmosphere with excellent scenic design. But this haunt also had one innocent trick that quite literally sent guests into the depths of the cellar. If soundstages have solid concrete floors, how did she get under there? Tent City is notorious for flooding, so you'll find raised floors there, but rarely are elevation changes an intentional design choice. I mean, what's so special about a raised floor anyways? Well, what goes up must come down. Consciously, the practical use is to hide something underneath. Deadites, ghosts, special effects. Unconsciously, the sense of realism, physically descending into the dark or the creaking steps as you walk into a dilapidated manor. That is what sets the best haunts apart from the rest. As you'd expect, constructing an entire extra floor costs a lot more money and requires a lot more permits. Which is also why there aren't a lot of ceilings or fully enclosed scenes at HHN without a very good reason. Each of them required their own sprinkler system due to Florida's fire code. So if you happen to notice the lighting shift or somehow you manage to be going up, look out because there's a very good reason. But hey, sometimes blowing money on everything else works just as well. 2021's The Haunting of Hill House, oops, wrong one, is the masterpiece that Stranger Things should have been. Universal clearly given their parents' credit card to spend as they please. Spellbinding special effects brought unique scares to life with an entrancing quality to the layers of detail found within the sets. A masterful showcase of the spectacles HHN can create when given free rein. Hill House may have been close to feeling overstuffed, but kept fresh with an abundance of variety and a spine-chilling fear factor. I wish all IPs had this sense of identity, and though Hill House may be technically better and is likely ranked much higher by others, I simply connected with everything coming up just a bit more. Gritty, disgusting, wretched. Oh, we're just going with that? Sweet. 2016's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre was either the scariest Texas Chainsaw ever or the lamest. Primal scares and theatrical scenes populated this, frankly disgusting maze, which may have enhanced what was already a skin-crawling nightmare or made the scareless slog that much more miserable. Entirely too dependent on timing with long resets for umpteen different scenes. Many undoubtedly missed some of the scenes that went the hardest in HHN. Oh, so good. good. This was as close as you could come, at least in this countdown, to experiencing the nauseating and hellish film production in real life. A haunt you really wanted to escape as soon as possible. But even once you thought you were safe, you weren't. An unforgettable subversion of the expected finales from the Sprung tents. And well, sure, some of the Texas Chainsaw slander is justified. I'll never understand any of the hate for 2019's Depths of Fear. Sure, it wasn't BioShock, but this opening scene is the most striking in HHN's history. My sympathies do go out to the actors that had to survive those clunky mouth brooder costumes, but y'all overcame that with ease. Each scene was crafted brilliantly, some of the best blocking and dynamic movement I've witnessed, only enhanced by the urgent sound design throughout. Valancourt's catastrophic voyage blew me away with something that I'd never seen before and reignited a sense of wonder about HHN. Even though it has slid a bit in the rankings, Depths of Fear remains a highlight and a personal favorite, one that could have been perfect with a handful of tweaks. I said the same thing about Hades' Gates of Ruin back in 2010. The more exquisite version of Nightingale's Blood Pit, for lack of a better term, this was the first haunt where I distinctly remember feeling something was lacking. The loud noises and jump scares superbly executed and astoundingly effective, but missing the connective tissue that really wowed me. I do believe this haunt still holds the record for the amount of SIF, or stuff in face, that I've survived, which sadly obscured a lot of the beautifully detailed sets. And while the endless Minotaur labyrinth was a frightening introduction to HHN's staple tricks, it was Medusa's reflection that really showed how HHN is always innovating on their established techniques.
People are coming through, they'll see a reflection in the shield over here. That is one of the masks that are used in the houses by the actors.
Mirrors aren't just used to create reflections of fear. They're also the trick that gives depth to so many scenes, whether you notice them or not. And when you combine those with the other tricks we've talked about, the results can be out of this world cool. You don't need a soundstage to build a mansion when you have mirrors to create more space, vertical or horizontal, whether it's used for scenic reasons or just classic universal misdirection. I bet they got you with this one a couple of times too. The worst mirror tricks are the obvious ones, but my favorites are actually the ones where you wouldn't know unless pointed out. I'll give y'all a few seconds to see if you can find the mirror. Did you also realize only half of the campfire is actually real? Mirrors are literally Universal's best hidden trick. But sometimes, you know, they're just an aesthetic choice. Oh hey, what's up, Tim? You're not supposed to be here until the last episode. Slaughter Cinema 2's return to the drive-in in 2024 for when something unexpected, too preoccupied on replicating the feelings of the original, even echoing the flow nearly to a T. Some lighthearted fun with a sprinkling of scares to start, a truly terrifying midpoint, and a finale that had everyone talking. Each B-movie had fun back and forth blocking or something going on that was pretty cool. Blast me in the comments all you want, but Blood and Chum was a pretty lackluster scene, even without comparison to Midnight Snack 2. But nothing in either could touch Zyborgs, a sprawling trench that revealed more and more terror each and every step. Masterful design, the stuff that makes you take back everything bad you've ever thought about HHN. Like, you know, this facade that probably cost more than my mortgage. 2017's Dead Waters. Man, what a scale, what a haunt, what a wow factor. I may be throwing out the terms best in history or favorite scene ever a lot now that we're getting to the good stuff, but I firmly stand by that this voodoo hallway stands at the very top of the pack. Still, an unfortunate victim of circumstance, Dead Waters still fundamentally relied on zombie-type scares the year after The Walking Dead finally departed HHN, and no amount of jaw-dropping scenic could eclipse that. Maybe it could for the most part, but you know what I mean. Brimming with the atmosphere that other professionals can only dream of, Dead Waters was one for the record books in many ways, just not always in the scare department. 2011 Saws and Steam, Into the Machine though? That visceral terror was one for the ages. Whizzing saw blades, flesh compactors, an adrenaline-pumping industrial nightmare that still wasn't BioShock. Okay, well, actually, it pretty much was, but a good old screamathon that harkened back to the classic theme park haunts I grew up with. From the moment those posters disappeared, revealing the true nature of the horizon, the intensity and humidity never let up for a second. With 45 haunts left to go, Lady Luck has finally entered the fray. I'll give the Scaredy Cat for scariest scene to this subway car in Dead Exposure Patient Zero, one of the most consistent heart attacks I've had during the event. And the Soiled Shorts for best actor scare to the Leatherface chase in 2016's Texas Chainsaw, with an honorable mention to those post-credits behemoths that traumatized so many. I'm gonna cheat a little with the melted plastic for best facade, as I think it's a rightful tie between The Haunting of Hill House and Dead Waters, but I also want to throw Evil Dead's Cold Open into the mix. Unmatched atmospherics all around. Finally, the big brain for best effects to Saws and Steam's opening scene. It didn't push technical boundaries like other effects or puppets in this bunch, but was surprising in the way that it accomplished more than just a stellar execution of exactly what was expected. We're officially more than halfway through the HHN Countdown, with every event year finally on the board. Now, any ideas on which one will be laid to rest first? Just remember, haunts aren't the only thing to do at HHN, so before this holiday season, make sure you stick around for the HHN Countdown Event Year Edition. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys, along with the Scaredy Cats, for more HHN Countdown in just a bit.